Sorry about that, everybody. I completely forgot that we're not going on Zoom for this one. So I had to start it out on the wrong foot there for a moment. And audio is good, so we'll get started. Welcome, everyone, to the debut, possibly only episode of the Average Intelligence News. So, making sure, everything is going good. So essentially, this is an idea we've been kicking around on and off the podcast for some time now in many, many different forms, with the goal of giving you, more content and essentially giving you a more nuanced and yet still average look at the news. Not necessarily of the day, but of current events, things that are going on, headlines for the most part. So we will just get started. Not necessarily sponsored by, but this podcast is brought to you by the Arate Podcast Network, aratemedia.org. There is a link down in the description below. Basically, all the podcasts on our network can be found in one central location, that being the Average Intelligence Podcast, the Arate Podcast down the middle for all you pro wrestling fans, part of your Broadway world for your musical and or Disney fans, and soon to include Breakfast Club, which is going to be another pop culture podcast. That's all I can tell you at the moment, but shall we get into the news? And by the way, comments thread is open, or the live chat rather is open. And if you're not watching the live stream, the comments are all open. Join in the conversation. So essentially how this is going to work is I've just got some headlines, most of which are from the All Sides app, which is a news app that I highly recommend to people. Essentially, every story they have a left-leaning version, a center version, and a right-leaning version. And then we have one story from the Daily Wire, and then to be fair, I pulled something from CNN's front page to, again, be fair and unbiased, or at least appear to be so. But the first order of business I have is Ice Cube has recently appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, the podcast, and I have not finished watching it yet, but it is quite good. Ice Cube is a very interesting guy, and he had put out not that long ago, I believe it's only been a couple of days since he made the statement, but essentially he said he wants to do a podcast tour to talk about, essentially, and I now know what he's talking about. Ice Cube is part of a new basketball league, one of the owners, or one of the founders to be more precise, although he is the CEO of the company, known as Big Three. It is a 3-on-3 basketball league that plays during the summer. I'm sorry, I'm making sure that I have this right here. Regular season. Yes, so playing June through August. So an interesting take, and he's made a lot of comments on the podcast so far about how this could be good for, players that had to retire from the NBA, but still definitely have followings. People want to see them play, so this would be one of many ways to do it. And then there are other ideas for other alternative sports leagues. Now, football is no stranger to this, as we've seen the XFL for sure, which has made yet another resurgence. And then I believe we've seen the arena football leagues, and then I believe now there's the American Football League, which is another alternative to the NFL. But we will see how this goes. So presumably, Ice Cube has been, as he said on the podcast on Joe Rogan's, he's talked about how he's received a lot of pushback from this directly from the NBA, and he does not really understand why, as his league schedule does not interfere with the NBA's at all, and in fact could drum up business during the offseason. So if you would like to hear more about this, I highly suggest you check out the Joe Rogan Experience. I forget the episode number, but you'll find it. It's fairly recent, and Ice Cube is the guest, rather. Joe Rogan is the host. But it's so far been a very good podcast. I highly recommend. Very entertaining. Ice Cube's always an entertaining kind of guy. All right, so the next headline, which is brought to us by All Sides. So when I'm reading one from All Sides, the actual article I'm going to take a look at is going to be the center version, but I will read you all three headlines. So the first one, the main headline is, how will new ruling on social media censorship impact the 2024 election? From the right, and this is a far right, from the New York Post opinion piece, Biden administration thinks it has divine right to nix conservatives' free speech rights. From the center, court ruling prompts fears of, quote, wild west of disinformation. And from the left, this is more of a center left from the New York Times, ruling puts social media at crossroads of disinformation and free speech. So on most of these, I'm not going to read the entire article because that would just be boring. But I will start reading and kind of skim and read the following, parts that I think are pertinent. But I'm telling you where to get the articles so you can read them yourselves. Again, this is from the All Sides News app, which is free, by the way. From the All Sides News team, following a judge's order that Biden administration officials can't push social media companies to censor, quote, content containing protected free speech, voices across the spectrum are speculating on the implications for the 2024 and beyond. Coverage from the Hill quoted supporters and opponents of the judge's order. It quotes Senator Eric Schmidt, Republican from Montana, calling the ruling a, quote, huge win for the First Amendment and a blow to censorship. It also quotes Darrell West, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute's Center for Technology Innovation, warning of a, quote, wild west of disinformation heading toward the 2024 election season. And this is sort of the tragedy of what has befallen us through all of history up to this point. But for the most part, the pandemic, which is where a lot of this current fear of disinformation has come from. We have seen repeatedly, particularly during the pandemic in regards to COVID, that several dissenting voices were flat out not only, there wasn't only skepticism what they were saying, many were censored and deplatformed. And this is continuing today, although there have been outlets like YouTube that are now going to allow, not so much for the pandemic, but YouTube put out a statement, and I don't know verbatim what they said, but essentially is they're no longer going to censor content talking about the 2020 election. Presumably, totally presumption, presumably because it would appear that the left does want Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee because they probably figure they can beat him again. Sound strategy, depending on who you ask. But that is presumably why they want to allow this talk to continue, because it can hurt Trump among independents and more, particularly those more left-leaning and or anti-Trump. But the article continues, dangerous information. A New York Times analysis determined that, quote, that the quote, government's actions at the heart of the case were intended largely as public health measures. If you say so. But reviewed by the judge, quote, through the filter of partisan culture wars. See, this is the kind of language that gets very frustrating, because so when one side does it, it's protecting people. When another side does it, it's censorship. And really? Rules for thee, not for me. And for the record, I will notate my bias. I like to think I'm pretty moderate, but if I do lean one way or another, probably lean a little right on most issues, with the exception of freedom. Then I am always kind of a strict libertarian in that regard. And I don't like censorship, generally speaking. There's obvious exceptions to like censorship that makes sense, i.e. decency on all ages platforms, that kind of censorship, yes. But I think of that more as curation, but we can play mind games with that later. The outcome of the continuing legal battle, the article stated, could, quote, shape the future of the First Amendment law and, quote, alter how far the government can go in trying to prevent and spread potentially dangerous information. That's the whole point of the First Amendment. Because if the government can say that information is dangerous, then they can censor it, or at least that's what they're hoping for. The whole point of the First Amendment is to be able to ensure the right to free speech, no matter how crazy it sounds. Sorry, not sorry. Because where does it end? Are we going to start saying what news outlets are allowed to report certain things? And this is a short article, so I'm going to go ahead and finish. An opinion piece in the New York Post Opinion asks, quote, when did the Biden administration become infallible with a divine right to nullify the free speech of conservatives? I think you might be focusing too much on conservatives there, because theoretically, if they can nullify free speech of conservatives, they can nullify free speech of anyone. The article outlined efforts by the Biden administration and federal agencies to remove posts from accounts from social media sites determining, quote, federal censorship tainted the 2020 and 2022 elections, spurring the suppression of millions of social media posts, almost all from conservatives. In this particular case, yes, but again, that power would enable them to effectively censor anyone's speech. So, very interesting. I guess we will see, although I agree with the court's decision in this particular one. It stands to reason that if you're not going to allow, and I don't understand how you could even fathom in the United States of America a sitting administration, regardless if they're Republican or Democrat, to have the ability to curate and censor information online is just flat out anti-American. So it surprises me that people are surprised of this ruling. It's simply upholding the First Amendment. So anyway, hello everyone who just joined the stream. A little bit different podcast this time. We're trying something new, a new concept. So if you like it, let us know. And if you really don't like it, let us know. And we'll never do it again, we promise. So essentially, this is just going through some news headlines and kind of just having a conversation about it, giving some nuance. So the next article we have, again from the All Sides app, fact check. Trump claims White House cocaine belongs to Biden family. The headline from the center left, Snopes, look out for unsubstantiated claims about cocaine at the White House. From the center, Hunter Biden claims and cocaine in White House, what we know, what we don't. From Newsweek. And from the right, which this is a far right, Free Beacon fact check, the Secret Service can't determine who brought cocaine to the White House. All of this seems pretty straightforward. We should just have some straight facts for this. Former President Donald Trump speculated in a post on Truth Social that the cocaine found inside the White House belonged to President Biden and his son Hunter. Is there any evidence to back up this claim? Reports indicate neither Joe nor Hunter Biden were at the White House when the cocaine was discovered by the Secret Service, which effectively means nothing. And in other related news, drug addicts say they can quit whenever they want. Continuing, initially, it was reported the cocaine was found in the White House library, citing a radio dispatch. The Secret Service later stated it was actually found, quote, inside a work area. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters, quote, where this was discovered is a heavily traveled area where many White House, West Wing, I should be even more specific, West Wing visitors come through this particular area. Jean-Pierre also stated that tours took place over the weekend. Politico reported it was found in a, quote, cubby area for storing electronics, where many people have authorized access, including staff or visitors, and presumably Hunter and Joe Biden. Normally, I wouldn't be so brash with my opinion on this, but I mean, it's kind of like, this is really similar to Jon Stewart's kind of bit that was not too long ago, but his bit when he was talking about the lab leak origin and the fact that many people in positions of authority consider that to still be just a theory. And he said something to the effect of, oh, and I also hear there's a breakout of chocolatey goodness in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It could be something, what did he say? It could be, the bats in the area, or it could be the chocolate factory. I mean, I don't mean to sling shit at Hunter Biden. I'm sorry, this is a news program. Thanks for the feedback, Travis. Again, this is kind of a new concept, and this is a live stream. I was thinking about this today. We had a podcast to do anyway, so we're kind of killing two birds with one stone. I think in the future for this program, if we keep doing it, we will just record it so we can add those photos and stuff like that. I was thinking the same thing, my friend, but thank you for the comment, and thanks for checking it out. So what was I saying? Oh, and I may be too close to the camera. I'll tell you what, I will back up a smidge. How about that? I'll do what I can immediately for you, Travis. Appreciate the comment again. So again, what I was saying, I don't mean to, well, I do mean to, but I'm not trying to just sling hate at Hunter Biden. But the fact remains is you have someone with a history. Thanks, Travis. But the fact remains you have an individual who has a history of substance abuse. This person was at the White House, and I don't mean a short history of substance abuse either. It's a pretty long and storied history. This person is at the White House during a certain interval of time, and then you find a substance in the White House. I'm not saying he's like guilty without being proven, but I don't think we exactly need to call in Sherlock Holmes here. Trump also claimed that security footage from inside the White House would quickly identify who the cocaine belonged to, stating in another Truth Social post, quote, "They already know the answer, but probably don't like it." That's probably accurate. An anonymous source quoted in Politico's coverage stated, quote, "Even if there were surveillance cameras, unless you were waving it about, it may not have been caught. It's a bit of a thoroughfare. People walk by there all the time." True, but it's still worth looking into surveillance footage. You know, leave no stone unturned, so to speak. So again, that was the center perspective from Newsweek on Hunter Biden's claim and cocaine in the White House. What we know, what we don't. Next, from Culture. We have Ben & Jerry's calls for return of, quote, stolen indigenous land in July 4th post. From the left, the Daily Beast, Ben & Jerry's July 4th tweet goes off like a busted firework. It seems like everybody has a similar perspective on this one. From the right, which is his center right, the Washington Times, Ben & Jerry's triggers boycott calls over July 4th message. Seems pretty straightforward. And from the center, News Nation, Ben & Jerry's urges return of indigenous land in July 4th post, which is the headline we just read. Vermont-based ice cream company Ben & Jerry's tweeted a message calling for the return of, quote, stolen indigenous land to its original owners. The tweet, which included a petition for the U.S. to return the Black Hills and Mount Rushmore to the Lakota Sioux tribe, triggered calls from some on social media for a boycott. And the quote read on Twitter, "This 4th of July, it's high time we recognize that the U.S. exists on stolen indigenous land and commit to returning it," Ben & Jerry's said on July 4th. Ben & Jerry's has long supported liberal causes and the Democratic Party, and the company recently decried the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action. The Daily Beast said Ben & Jerry's faced criticism, quote, despite offering a much-needed history lesson. Other sources highlighted from some accusing Ben & Jerry's of running their business on the, quote, stolen land mentioned in their tweet. Fair criticism. So for this one, I don't presume to even know what the right answer to that is. It's a very complicated and nuanced issue, and most of history is. But I will tell you this. I'll never forget this story because it was one of the first times I was kind of awakened, so to speak, to the beauties of learning history in depth. So many, many years ago, my second job, really, I worked at Walmart, and I sold cell phones, but it was in the electronics department. And there was an older gentleman, and I know his name, but I'm drawing a blank. Probably best not to shout him out anyway. But anyway, he was a history teacher, and he worked at Walmart part-time on the weekends and during the summer. And he and I hit it off. I got a kick out of this guy, because if you want to imagine what he looked like, imagine Ben Franklin, but with a beard. But not the mustache part, just like the beard portion. Benjamin Franklin with a beard. Very, very intelligent man. He would give me history lessons as we were working. I absolutely loved working with this guy. But we were having a conversation one day, and I don't remember how it was prompted, but I had said something to the effect of, you know, generally speaking, like, well, yes, but we're living on stolen land. And he kind of just goes, kind of like that Ben Affleck meme, just like, because I'm sure he taught middle school, by the way. So he taught middle school history, so he hears it. And this is before things got really, I don't even want to say woke, but like heavily social justice, because I think this would have been 2006 or 7. maybe 2005. So between 2005 and 2007. And he just said, I get really tired of hearing that, he said, because it's not that it's incorrect, but it lacks a lot of nuance. And he goes on to talk about how, and I'm not even going to name names, but like, okay, so when the Americans came in and took over certain land, they displaced said tribe. But that said tribe displaced another tribe. And before them, it was very likely that another tribe had come in and displaced another tribe. Now, the scale to which America did it was completely different. And that's true. And it's not that we shouldn't talk about it and acknowledge it, but to suggest that there's some sort of divine right for a certain tribe to live on certain land, it's not even that it's false. It's just that it's nuanced, and you really have to go back, and it depends on who you talk to. I wish I could think of a specific example. There's a movie. The clip goes around social media a lot, and I don't know the validity, but it's basically, I believe it's an Army colonel, U.S. Army colonel, who's talking to Sitting Bull. And essentially says the same thing. It's like, well, you say it's divine right. Our God says it's our divine right. And I'm sure that the tribe that you took it from saw that it was their divine right. But I think probably the most telling thing on this is the criticism that Ben and Jerry's has been conducting their business on said stolen land. So it's a sort of glass houses argument. Very interesting conversation that unfortunately, for the most part, we probably can't have today for fear of being called a bigot or a white supremacist or, I don't know, insert straight white male criticism anywhere. And you'll, imperialist, colonizer, yeah, you'd get called a colonizer for sure. I think it's a conversation we should have, though. And personally, there are things we can do to not necessarily make it right, but there are things that can be done. But the fact of the matter is, this is where we live, and this is how things happen. I think we ought to be more concerned about the future. Just this reporter's opinion. So anyway, let's see if there's any more interesting articles here. More bits about the White House. This doesn't really require the article, but Trump aide Walt Nauta, I believe his name is pronounced Nauta, pleads not guilty in Mar-a-Lago documents case. From Reuters. Good luck with that. There was one bit about Twitter in here, so... yes. Meta launches Threads in bid to compete with Twitter. So from the center is that news headline from the Wall Street Journal. From the left, why Instagram is taking on Twitter with Threads. And from the right, Zuckerberg says Threads, Instagram's new Twitter-like app, launched with 5 million users, Elon Musk responds. So we're going to take a look at the Wall Street Journal's perspective. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, launched Threads on Wednesday, a new social media app designed to compete with Twitter. The app is available to users in more than 100 countries and allows people to sign up from their Instagram accounts. It reportedly surpassed 10 million signups in the first 7 hours. Pretty big deal. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg celebrated the platform's launch with a post on the platform saying, quote, just past 5 million signups in the first 4 hours. Twitter owner Elon Musk said on his own platform, that being Twitter, that, quote, it is infinitely preferable to be attacked by strangers on Twitter than indulge in the false happiness of hide the pain Instagram. Alrighty. Musk and Zuckerberg have recently traded barbs, with the two men even seeming to agree to fight each other in a cage match, which, let's be real. So, once again, the Average Intelligence Podcast is over here predicting the future, because I believe it was only a couple weeks ago I said two different things, but they're kind of related. I had said that they really need to bring celebrity boxing or celebrity MMA, like i.e. a cage match, and make it a thing, and all the money goes to charity. And then I also said something to the effect of, if you want to solve the United States deficit problem, you have politicians be able to box and all that money goes to the deficit. Put that on pay-per-view. We will solve the debt crisis in no time. But I digress. I feel like, with the exception of Robert Kennedy Jr., I feel like most of the Republicans will win those fights. There's a couple of Democrats that can throw down, RFK being one of them. Anyway, returning to the article. Sources across the spectrum covered the news prominently. Many framed it as the opening salvo in a new battle between big tech platforms. Now, since this article is released, it has been reported that Elon has threatened to sue Meta over copycat app threads. Now, this depends on what's in the code on the website and how the patents are written. So even if he sued... Oh, Travis comments again, I watched them spar. Zuckerberg is way better. Were they weren't sparring each other, were they? Because that would have broken the internet. Now, I know Mark Zuckerberg has been doing a lot of training recently, and I don't think Musk has. Again, Mark Zuckerberg was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and he was talking about how he's training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. So he's basically training in MMA. And we were talking about this off air one day. Practice partners, yeah, that's what I thought. Oh man, that sparring video would break the internet, wouldn't it? I feel like Zuckerberg's probably a better fighter, but Elon's got a size advantage, so I think I think it'd be fun to watch. Honestly, it's anybody's fight, but damn, tell me that wouldn't make so much money. It's ridiculous. They could probably, from the money that generates, they could probably feed a small country for a year, easily. Get Bill Gates to sponsor it. Moving on. So as I said, I did have an article from the Daily Wire, which, if we continue to do this, there's not going to be too many articles from the Daily Wire because of their obvious right-leaning bias, even though I tend to enjoy their articles. I don't think they get enough credit. I mean, obviously they have a right-leaning bias, but at least they're opening about it. And this one, we're going to read most of this. The headline from the Daily Wire, written by Tom Pierce. Quote, missing Hunter Biden witness comes forward in video statement accusing Biden's of corruption, DOJ cover-up. American-Israeli energy expert Gal Luft, which I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, accused the Department of Justice of maliciously targeting him to protect President Joe Biden on Wednesday. Pretty lofty allegations. Let's continue. Luft said in a video statement obtained by the New York Post that he had provided evidence of Biden family corruption to the FBI and DOJ in March of 2019, weeks before Biden announced his run for the White House. Luft said he heard nothing from the DOJ until American authorities arrested him in Cyprus earlier this year on charges of illegal arms trading, acting as an unregistered foreign agent, and lying to the FBI. I would be curious as to research those claims, because obviously this article is quoting him as saying that he was set up, but I would be curious to see those claims. Luft has been the, quote, missing witness of House Republicans' investigation into the Biden family's business dealings for months. According to the Post, House investigators have been unable to locate him to request his testimony to Congress. Now, putting on the conspiracy theory cap here, perhaps he may have knowledge of what's going on, and he may just be saying he has testimony, presumably to possibly get out of trouble, or he may actually have the information, in which case the DOJ needs to hear him out. But we continue. Luft, who spends most of his time in Israel, offered to meet with the DOJ in 2019 to hand over evidence and information from Hunter Biden's dealings with CEFC. Luft advised the now defunct Chinese energy company for roughly 4 years, and during the time that Hunter and the company were working together. So he probably would have evidence if any such existed. Luft said he met a 6-person team from the DOJ and FBI in Brussels in March, weeks before President Biden announced his bid for the White House. The team included the 2 DOJ prosecutors from the Southern District of New York, Daniel Reichenthal, and Catherine Ghosh. Representing the FBI side, Special Agent Joshua Wilson of the Baltimore field office was one of the 4 in attendance. Wilson's signature would later appear on the subpoena authorizing the FBI to confiscate Hunter Biden's laptop from a Delaware computer repair store. As I've said repeatedly. Welcome, Alex, and thank you, Travis. Let us know how you like the program, gentlemen. We appreciate the viewership. Again, this is a new concept for us, the first one we've ever done. We'd like to be able to do this because for those of you who don't know, if you're not familiar with the channel, we do a podcast weekly, but we are trying to, we had a couple of shorts go semi-viral and our subscriber count went way up. So we are now trying to work on getting our watch time up. And one of the ways we figure we can do that is twice or maybe a few times a week, we do just little mini episodes like this where we just go through headlines and talk about them. Yeet. So continuing. In addition to Hunter's dealings with CEFC, Loof said he also told the DOJ about a mole close to the FBI that was informing on its activity to the Biden family. The mole, Loof said he learned from CEFC executives, had a very distinctive physical appearance related to his nickname, One Eye. This is getting so close to a fiction novel. I just watched the movie No Way Out a couple of days ago, on July 3rd, actually, because I was off work and was just chilling on the couch. That movie's so good, by the way, if you haven't seen it. It's a suspense thriller that is quite good, kind of underrated. I'd never heard of it before I accidentally watched it many years ago. Loof goes on to say, after Brussels, I never heard back from the DOJ, but instead of showing appreciation for my whistleblowing, I became public enemy number one. Over the past 4 years that followed me, my family, my friends, my associates were all harassed, intimidated, and finally I was prosecuted, Loof said. Loof has called for the DOJ to release his indictment and the evidence against him to the public. He said he is facing a 100-year prison sentence if convicted. Loof has denied the charges against him. I mean, you released Trump's indictment, why not release this guy's? Loof said he was arrested in Cyprus in February and was awaiting possible extradition to the U.S. when he escaped and is now hiding from U.S. authorities in an undisclosed location. Again, this sounds like a movie. Quote, while I was detained in Cyprus, I was portrayed in the international media as an arms dealer, even though I never traded a bullet in my entire life. Internet, fact check that. I will do so afterwards, but... In fact, nowhere in my indictment the DOJ claimed or presented evidence that I bought, sold, shipped, or financed any weapons, Loof said. Well, if that's true, then your indictment doesn't have much to stand on. The energy expert was also charged under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, he said, for ghostwriting an article published in a Chinese newspaper under former CIA head James Woolsey's name. The indictment said Loof caused a $6,000 payment from CEFC to Woolsey over the article. Quote, nowhere the indictment the DOJ mentioned the well-known fact that Mr. Woolsey had been an advisor to my think tank since 2002, and that there was nothing in the article that represented a Chinese interest. To the contrary, the notion that I, Gao Luft, spoon-fed a CIA director with policy proposals on China, treating him like a useful idiot, is not only an insult to the intelligence community, it is an insult to the intelligence of every American, Luft said. And then it just goes on about some of the other false charges. I do not have faith that I would receive a fair trial in a New York court, he said. Quote, the very same prosecutor who is now after me, Daniel Reichenthal, told the judge at the time that mentioning the name Biden would, quote, add a political dimension to the case. And the judge agreed, Loof said, which means if I'm ever brought before a U.S. court, I would not be allowed to utter the words Brussels or Biden. The real context of my arrest, being patient zero of the Biden family investigation, would be hidden from the jury. So again, that article, Missing Hunter Biden Witness, comes forward in a video statement accusing Biden's of corruption, DOJ of cover-up, is from the Daily Wire, which you should be able to find. Alex says, has One Eye as a code name, wonder who that could be in the FBI. Seems like it's easy to narrow down. Yeah, right? It's not a very wise nickname. And then our final article of the evening, in an effort to be fair, I pulled this fluff piece from CNN's homepage. I went with the top article on there. Here's what Americans say they need to earn to feel rich, or even just financially secure, from Jean Sahadi or Gianna Sahadi, not sure how to pronounce that, from CNN Business. More than 2,500 U.S. adults said they would need to earn on average $233,000 a year to feel financially secure and $483,000 a year to feel rich or attain financial freedom, according to a new survey from Bankrate. I'm curious to see where these people were surveyed from. Just for comparison's sake, the median earnings for a full-time, year-round worker in 2021 was $56,473, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. And then it goes on to just read some other statistics. In Bankrate's survey, 72% of respondents said they did not currently feel financially secure, although 46% said they expect to someday. The reasons cited for not feeling secure today include high inflation, 63% cited that, the economic environment, 48%, which is weird because you would think if that many people were blaming inflation, that would tie directly into the economic environment, so I kind of questioned the validity of this survey. You got to be careful with data from surveys. Right, Travis? I feel like, at least where I live, I'm not sure where you guys live, but here, I mean, you're not filthy rich, but $52K a year for one person's not that bad. Insufficient emergency savings is what 42% cited, and insufficient retirement savings, 41%. Rising interest rates, which is tied directly to inflation, 36%. Low pay or low career mobility, 33%. High debt, 26%. I'm shocked that's not higher. And housing affordability at 25%. Again, all this ties into inflation. Wherever you find yourself financially at the moment, there is no shortage of ways to boost your financial health if you focus on what's in your control. Here are just a few to consider. Make it as easy as possible to pay off your credit card debt. Look for a balance transfer card that offers you an initial 0% rate. Here's the problem, though. I hate articles like this because they never tell you. They always give you this long list of things, and then they never give you the insight as to what that actually means. So if you've got a high credit card balance, the likelihood of you being able to transfer that to a new card is very low because of your debt to income ratio. Again, it depends on your income, but if your income is high enough for that level of high debt to not affect your debt to income ratio, then you probably have enough income to just pay it off. And yeah, you'd save a little bit of money transferring to 0%, but I just don't know if it's worth it. I'd agree. This is Alex again. I'd agree with Travis. That would cover a single individual's living expenses mostly. You might not be able to purchase luxury items, but that's not surviving. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, are you filthy rich? No. But for an individual, like, I'll put it to you this way. I like to think I live reasonably comfortable, and I don't make that much. Now, granted, I live in central Indiana, which is a pretty cheap place to live overall, but and it is just me. Like, I'm not supporting a family, but it's a one-income household for one person, so. And again, that doesn't, like, national average of 52, like, that's a whole whack of factors. Because as we all know, life varies greatly and prices vary greatly from state to state. Ohio, okay, you're close. Not too far. You guys around the Kings Island area? Because my co-host and I like to go all the time. That's our spot. And then make a plan to pay off all or most of what you owe in that period of time before a high rate kicks in again. If you could do that, you wouldn't have the debt in the first place, though, as Dave Ramsey would probably say. But here's another sagely wisdom from CNN who can relate to the average person about as, well as a bird can relate to a fish. Take fuller advantage of the benefits on offer from your employer. Combined, these potentially can save you a lot of money. Example, tuition reimbursement, student loan assistance, plus subsidies or discounts for everything from legal help, financial coaching, and therapy to gym memberships, travel, and commuting, and free flu shots. Yeah, because I'm telling you, that flu shot that I don't get really breaks the bank. Where do these people work? If companies have these kinds of benefits, you're not getting paid paltry amounts. Wow, I was meant to just read this article. Okay. Very cool. Well, I hate to ask a favor of you gentlemen, but if you don't already subscribe, would you mind giving the video a like and clicking that subscribe button. Pure blood. Love it. One of the most valuable benefits, however, is likely to be matching contribution of your employer may make to your 401k. This one I actually agree with because it depends on your company, but I absolutely, if you're not destitute and like actually if you're not trying to get out of debt too, if your company offers a 401k, particularly if it's a match, absolutely do it. It's literally free money. I remember back when I was working at Walmart, I think at the time their max 401k match was 6%, which means you deduct 6% from your check and then they give you another 6%. So your total savings is going 12% is going to your 401k, which is huge. Absolutely huge. So you're getting 12% for 6%. And if you're 50 or older, you can take advantage of catch-up contributions you can make every year, which can not only reduce your current year tax bill, but might offer you an even bigger matching contribution from your employer. Then this says you can triage your bills when your back is against the wall. If you find yourself unable to pay all your bills in a given month, there are ways to minimize the negative fallout. Oh, this is going to be beautiful. Start with clearly communicating your situation to your creditors as soon as possible. Okay, I actually agree with that because I think one thing that so many people do when they are behind is they don't talk to their creditors. I've heard this from not a collection agency, but I've heard this from bill collectors before, both anecdotally and talking to me, because years ago I had some really, really bad financial woes. And I quote, "We don't want your car. We want your money." So the best thing you can do is call and talk to them. A lot of times they'll work with you. There were a couple of times where, like back when I had a car loan, I didn't even know I had this, but they said I had a loan holiday. So I forget how many times a year. I think it was once or twice, but I could forego a payment and like my interest would still go up, but they wouldn't count it as late, which was tremendous. They said a lot of people use it around Christmas time, but I didn't know I had it until I was in trouble and called them. And I got so many that couple years where I was in really tight financial struggles, I got so many late fees waived just because I called them and told them what was going on. And they'd always be like, "Well, when do you think you can make the payment, or can you make anything now?" And if I could, I could. And if I could tell them, I would tell them. And generally speaking, they completely worked with you pain free. So yes, if you're behind, absolutely talk to you, especially your utilities. Because I once had, I can't remember if it was gas or electric, but I called them and I basically got a 10-day extension, just because I called. So absolutely do that. Spend money on what matters most to you. If you can become clear about what matters most to you, it makes it easier to cut down your spending. Okay, that's actually good advice. So that is it from CNN. Here's what Americans say they need to earn to feel rich or even financially secure. I could see that $200,000 figure to feel rich. Although, geez, if I made $100K, I'd feel wealthy as hell. Thanks, Travis. Appreciate it. And then Alex adds, I personally think there shouldn't be a cap on 401ks if you're in the lower tax bracket. If someone is willing to sacrifice a portion of their paycheck for their future, why not honor and support them? I'm not really sure why there is a cap on them, but I guess conversely, to avoid that, once you reach your 401k cap, you could always contribute to a Roth IRA instead, which historically performs better anyway. That's assuming that your income can support it. But I'm guessing that if you're at the cap of 401k, then you're probably okay for that. Thanks, Eric. Like, share, and subscribe for more content. Oh, so you pinned it. I was wondering about that. Travis. I owe the IRS. They should be open Saturdays if they really wanted to help. You know what, Travis? A lot of people really hate the IRS. I hate the Department of Revenue, the state organization. Actually, I found the IRS over the years, other than the fact that just the bureaucracy, which comes part and parcel with government organizations, they've been pretty good to work with. It's relatively easy to set up a payment plan if you do owe them money. But again, the key is to call them and don't act like it doesn't exist, because the problem is not going to go away. Trust me. Well, that's it for the news articles for the day. Actually, went a little bit longer than I was trying to. That's true, man. That is true. That's probably their biggest fault. They are nice and easy to work with, but yeah, getting through is a chore. But that's it for the news articles. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And for those of you who didn't catch the live stream, be sure to leave a comment down below if you liked it, and give the video a like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. And let us know if you'd like us to do this again. Have a good night, everybody, and we will see you next Thursday on the Average Intelligence Podcast, and maybe some more Average Intelligence news coming your way in the near future. And going back before I forget, the other podcasts on the Arte Podcast Network. Let's see what's coming up. It's a lot coming up this week. So the Average Intelligence Podcast was tonight. Tomorrow night, Haley from the Part of Your Broadway World podcast is joining me on the Arte Podcast, talking about musical theater and why it's awesome, theater in general and why it's awesome. And then on Sunday, we're getting a double feature from Down the Middle, because we missed the previous episode. For all you pro wrestling fans out there, we're going to be talking about AEW Collision and what that likely means for the company moving forward, as well as what's going on with CM Punk in that regard. And then after that, we're going into immediately a second episode where we're going to revamp our fantasy card and work towards our virtual pay-per-view that's going to be free. Anyway, have a good night, and we will see you